You ever get hit with a childhood memory so specific it feels like your brain just opened a dusty little drawer labeled Property of 2001, Do Not Discard, and inside that drawer is a theme song, a smell, and one random object you haven't thought about in 20 years. A Capri Sun, a Scholastic Book Fair flyer, a VHS plastic clamshell case thick enough to survive a tornado, the sound of dial-up internet screaming in the other room, while you're just trying to live, man. Today, we're talking about 3 kids shows that did not feel like television. They felt like places. A giant blue house, where your feelings were not only allowed, they were basically on the lesson plan. A cardboard clubhouse, where creativity was treated like an everyday survival skill. And a magical library run by lions, where reading was not homework. It was chaos, songs, puppets, and occasional literacy sorcery. These were not just shows. These were emotional support locations. These were the kind of shows you watched after a hard day at kindergarten. You got home, you took off your shoes with the Velcro, maybe ate some dinosaur-shaped nuggets, and turned on the TV to let a bear, a cardboard art duo, or a lion family gently explain life to you. And the weird thing is, all 3 of these shows were doing basically the same thing. Bear in the Big Blue House taught you how to have feelings without turning into a tiny emotional WWE wrestler. Out of the Box taught you how imagination didn't require money, talent, or a Pinterest account. It just required cardboard and commitment. And Between the Lions taught you how to read, while also quietly admitting that English language is a scam. So let's go back. Because once these shows come back, they come back hard. They come back like the smell of a brand new plastic lunchbox in August. And we have to start with the biggest, bluest hug of the 3. Bear in the Big Blue House.
Welcome to the Blue House.
Hello, I'm the small mouse.
Things to do.
Fun for you.
This show was basically, what if your therapist was a giant bear, but in a way that felt extremely safe? Not a cold therapist. Not a clipboard therapist. A warm, fuzzy, deeply patient therapist who lived in a house the color of every dentist's office mural and somehow always knew exactly what kind of day you were having. That was Bear. And Bear was elite. Created by Mitchell Kriegman and produced by Jim Henson Television, the show premiered on Playhouse Disney in 1997 and ran into the mid-2000s, which means Bear was there for a huge chunk of peak kid culture. This was the era of Game Boys, hit clips, bubble TVs, and parents yelling, "Get off the computer! I need the phone line!" And through all of that, Bear remained calm. Honestly, Bear was more emotionally stable than most adults I know. And of course, Bear was performed by Noel McNeil, which opens a whole nostalgia side quest once you realize how many children's shows that guy's career touches. This man was basically an undercover architect of childhood. He is one of those names you don't know as a kid, but once you grow up and start connecting the dots, you realize half your early memories are standing on his shoulders. And then there was the rest of the house. Ojo, who had the exact energy of every kid who asked why until adults started seeing static. Tutter, who moved through life like he had 3 overdue obligations and a caffeine dependency. Trilo, who felt like pure uncut whimsy. Hip and Pop, who were basically aquatic comic relief with twin energy. Shadow, who somehow made storytelling feel like a sacred forest ritual. And then Luna. Good grief. Luna the Moon was one of those characters that hit way harder than a children's show side character had any right to. Those goodnight scenes were soft enough to make a grown adult stare into the middle distance like they just heard a dashboard confessional song at Walgreens.
Hey, this was really fun.
We hope you liked it too.
Seems like we've just begun when suddenly we're through. Goodbye, goodbye, good friends, goodbye. 'Cause now it's time to go. But hey, I say, well, that's okay.
'Cause we'll see you very soon, I know.
Very soon, I know.
And one of the interesting things about the show is that a lot of people still think it ended because Lynn Thigpen, the voice of Luna, passed away. But production had actually already wrapped by then. The rumor stuck because emotionally, viewers could not process a world where Bear existed without Luna. The audience basically invented a myth because the truth was less poetic than their feelings. That is how important Luna was. Also, Bear did not just stay on TV. This man got a live stage show at Disney MGM Studios, which makes total sense because Bear in the Big Blue House was one of those rare shows that really did feel like a place you could physically visit. It felt real. Like if you got on the right shuttle bus at Disney, turned left past a stroller parking zone, and walked through one suspiciously large blue door, Bear would be inside like, "Hey there, big fella." And the show looked expensive because it was beautifully designed, warmly lit, musically rich, emotionally smart. It won Emmys, and you can feel that quality in every part of it. This was not some cheap, let's distract the toddlers operation. This was premium comfort programming. It did something a lot of kids' shows fail to do. It was gentle without being boring. That is hard because children can smell fake boring from a mile away. They'll turn on you instantly. Kids will abandon a dull show faster than they abandoned Tamagotchi once the batteries died. But Bear never felt dull. It felt safe. And that is a huge difference. But if Bear taught you how to feel, the next show taught you how to make something out of absolutely nothing. Which is honestly the most 90s craft store miracle imaginable.
Out of the box, out of the box, out of the box, out of the box. Take one box, put it with another. Let's look
Out of the box. Out of the Box is one of the most aggressively wholesome concepts ever aired. It is basically this: two warm, reassuring adults. A giant playhouse made out of cardboard boxes. Some songs, some crafts, neighborhood kids, and enough emotional safety to lower your blood pressure through the screen. That is the show. And somehow, it worked like magic. Created by Douglas Love and Ellen Gusenberg Kent, Out of the Box premiered in 1998 and centered on the box. This imaginative clubhouse made entirely from cardboard, where Tony James and Vivian Bayou-Bay McLaughlin welcomed kids in to make art, sing, play pretend, and generally live better lives than most adults in open concept office jobs. And the genius of the set is that every kid understood it instantly. Because every child in human history has seen a cardboard box and thought, this is no longer a box. It is a spaceship, a castle, a lemonade stand, a secret base, a place where your little brother is not allowed unless he knows the password. Out of the Box built an entire philosophy out of that instinct. It basically said, your imagination is enough. We're starting there. That is such a beautiful message, especially in a world that would later become overrun with iPad kids, unboxing videos, and adults on Etsy charging $38 for something your grandma could make from felt and spike. And Tony and Vivian were perfect. They had this incredibly soothing energy where they never seemed rushed, never seemed fake, and never acted like children were annoying little interruptions to the concept of adulthood. They genuinely felt happy to see the kids, which, as a kid, you can tell kids know when adults are pretending. Tony especially had one of those faces and voices that instantly made you feel like everything was going to be okay, even if your popsicle had just broken in half in a deeply unfair way. And then you find out Tony James had been in Stomp, which means there is a direct line from performance art, where people bang on trash cans, to a cardboard creativity show for small children. Again, range. Again, iconic. And then there is the goodbye song.
So long, farewell to you, my friends. Goodbye for now. Until we meet again, I say so long, farewell to you, my friends. Goodbye for now. Until we meet again. It's been great.
That song was not an outro. That was an emotional processing exercise disguised as a melody. Those goodbyes on late 90s and early 2000s kids TV were serious business. Bear had one. Out of the Box had one. These shows were giving children healthier closure than most corporate breakups. And one of my favorite little connections here is that Out of the Box's farewell song tradition was inspired by the goodbye spirit of Bear in the Big Blue House, which honestly makes perfect sense. These shows are cousins. Different aesthetics, same emotional mission. Hey little buddy, today is ending, but in a nice way. Also, if you remember Alicia from the show, yes, that is Alicia Allen, who later showed up in things like School of Rock and Are We There Yet? Which is one of those perfect nostalgia handshakes where one stage of your childhood meets another stage of your childhood, and they both go, oh hey, fancy seeing you here. What I love most about Out of the Box, though, is that it did not treat creativity like some rare magical power only a few lucky kids had. It treated creativity like breathing, like tying your shoes, like putting stickers on a folder, like drawing an unnecessarily muscular dinosaur during class when you were supposed to be learning subtraction. Just a normal thing you do. That is such a healthy idea to give a kid. But now we have done feelings. We have done creativity, which means it is time for the show that took reading, phonics, books, language, and literacy and somehow turned all of that into a full-on puppet comedy universe.
Here's how. Come and read between the lines. Come on, come in, begin the world away.
Between the Lions. Between the Lions might genuinely be one of the most impressive educational shows ever made because it was doing extremely serious educational work while still acting like a complete maniac. And I mean that lovingly. The premise alone is incredible. A family of lions runs a magical library. That is already better than half the pitches on television right now. Theo and Cleo are the parents. Lionel and Leona are the cubs. And every episode revolves around words, stories, letters, sounds, books, and reading-related chaos. So right away you are in a library run by lions, which is a sentence no one should ever be able to say naturally, and yet here we are. And the wild part is, the show was deeply grounded in actual literacy research. This was not PBS just doing its "we care about learning" thing and hoping nobody checks. Between the Lions was built to help kids with phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, reading fluency, and overall love of books. In other words, this show had a real mission. It was not just cute. It was not just quirky. It was a full literacy machine in puppet form. And yet, it never felt like homework. That is the miracle. Because instead of presenting reading like some dry, educational Brussels sprout, the show turned language into this weird, chaotic playground full of recurring sketches, songs, animation bits, and absolute nonsense. Cliffhanger, who spent his entire life hanging from cliffs like a man who had made several poor but entertaining decisions. The Vowels, who turned vowels into girl group drama. Dr. Ruth Wertheimer, which is still one of the most insane educational pun names ever approved in a professional environment. And Fred Newman, who basically functioned like PBS's in-house wizard of human sound effects. This show was stacked. And the puppetry roster was ridiculous too. Peter Linz, Jennifer Barnhart, Pam Arciero, Tim Lagasse. Once you grow up and start recognizing the names behind the felt, you realize this show was basically an all-star game for children's television puppetry. And then there is the award side. Between the Lions won 10 Emmys. 10. That is not fondly remembered little PBS show territory. That is domination. That is the educational show equivalent of showing up to the Scholastic Book Fair with a $20 bill and no adult supervision. This show came to win. And I think part of why it still lives in people's heads is because it made words feel alive. Not neat. Not sterile. Not boring. Alive. Weird. Musical. Tricky. Flexible. Funny. It admitted that reading can be frustrating sometimes, that letters are occasionally ridiculous, that English contains the kind of nonsense that would make any reasonable person file a complaint, but it also made it clear that language was worth learning because language was fun. That is a powerful thing to teach a kid. And when you put all three of these shows together, the bigger pattern starts to click. Bear in the Big Blue House gave you emotional vocabulary. Out of the Box gave you creative vocabulary. Between the Lions gave you literal vocabulary. They are three versions of the same gift. They made childhood feel doable. That is what we are really remembering. Not just Bear talking to Luna. Not just Tony and Vivian inside the cardboard clubhouse. Not just a library staffed by lions like that was a totally normal municipal arrangement. We are remembering the feeling of being helped. Gently. Of being taught without being talked down to. Of being comforted without being bored. Of being treated like your little kid brain was not a nuisance, but a person worth taking care of. And honestly, that may be why these shows hit so hard now. Because they were not just entertainment. They were emotional support architecture. They were places you could go when the world was still weird and new and slightly sticky for no reason. And somebody, a bear, two artists, or a lion family would help you make sense of it. And now, I need to know, what shows were special for you growing up? Write in the comments so I know what shows to cover in future episodes. And tell me, is there a childhood memory in your head scratching to get out? A song? A line? A puppet? A set? A weird little segment that has been living in your subconscious since the Bush administration? Drop that in the comments, because your half memory might be the next episode. You better subscribe so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching.